My daughter called me at 11 p.m. on the second night of her honeymoon. I was still awake. Mothers do not sleep properly when their children are far away. We lie in the dark and listen to a silence that does not feel complete. When I saw her name on the screen, I smiled. I thought she was calling to tell me about the hotel, the food, how beautiful the room was, the small, happy details that newly married daughters call their mothers to share. I picked up. She did not say hello. She said, Mama. One word. But I have been her mother for 26 years, and I know every shape her voice makes. I know the voice she uses when she's excited, when she's tired, when she's performing happiness for an audience. This voice I had never heard before. This was the voice of a woman standing at the edge of something she could not come back from. Ada, what is wrong? Silence. Ada, talk to me. Then she said, Mama, I need you to come to this hotel right now, tonight, room 14. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. And Mama, bring Pastor. The call ended. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark for 3 seconds. Then I got up and started dressing. My name is Mama Ada. I am 53 years old. Kingsley and I married in 1998. We had 2 children, Ada, our first, and Emeka, who came 4 years later. Kingsley worked in oil services. He was away often, 3 weeks on, 1 week off. The rhythm of Port Harcourt marriages. You learn to hold your family together in the gaps. He was not a perfect man. No man is. But he was present when he was home. He prayed with us. He provided. He danced at Ada's graduation with tears in his eyes and embarrassed her completely, and she loved him for it. I loved him for 25 years. I am telling you this so you understand what it cost me to open that door. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there, because I could not make this journey alone that night, and I cannot tell this story alone now. I called Pastor Emeka on the way to the car. He was one of our oldest friends. He had married Ada and Tobekuchu just 2 days before. He picked up on the second ring, still awake, and I told him Ada had called and asked for him, and something was wrong, and I needed him to come with me to the hotel. He did not ask questions. He said, I am already putting on my shoes. We drove to the hotel in silence mostly. Pastor Emeka prayed quietly under his breath. I gripped the steering wheel and kept my mind empty, because if I let it fill with questions, I would not be able to drive. Ada had chosen this hotel herself, a clean, modest place in the GRA, not expensive. She had loved her for that, her practicality, her groundedness. I parked outside. Pastor Emeka and I walked through the small lobby. The receptionist looked up. I told her my daughter was in room 14 and she had called me. She nodded and pointed to the corridor. Room 14 was at the end. The door was slightly open. A thin line of light showed underneath. I pushed it open. Ada was sitting on the floor. Not the bed, the floor. Her back against the wall beside the bathroom door. Her wedding dress still on. Her knees pulled to her chest. Her face was the face of someone who had already passed through the worst moment and was now sitting in the rubble of it. She looked up when I entered. She did not speak. She just looked at me, and then she looked toward the bathroom door. I followed her eyes. The bathroom door was closed. I turned back to Ada. Where is Tobekuchu? Her chin moved, a small, broken movement. He went to get help from the front desk. He does not know yet who he just went to get. She stopped. Her voice failed completely. I walked to the bathroom door. I knocked once. Nothing. I turned the handle. It was unlocked. I pushed it open. And I saw my husband, Kingsley, sitting on the edge of the bathtub in his shirt and trousers, his jacket on the floor, his face in his hands, the face of a man who has been caught so completely that he has already moved past denial and arrived somewhere quieter and more terrible. He looked up when the door opened. He saw me. He said nothing. I stood in that bathroom doorway for a long time. Behind me, I heard Pastor Emeka's sharp intake of breath. I heard Ada begin to cry quietly on the floor. I heard the small sounds of a world rearranging itself into a shape I did not recognize. I looked at my husband of 25 years sitting on the edge of a bathtub in our daughter's honeymoon hotel room, and I asked him the only question that existed. How long? Be honest in the comments. If you were standing in that doorway, what is the first thing you would have done? Because I am still not sure I did the right thing. He told me that night. Not everything, not all at once. The full truth came in pieces over the days that followed, each piece worse than the last, arranged by God or fate or simple mathematics into the most complete destruction I have ever witnessed. But the shape of it I understood that night, in that bathroom. Kingsley and Tobekuchu's mother. Her name was Mrs. Dike, Amara Dike, a widow. She had moved to Port Harcourt from Owerri 4 years ago. She attended our church for 6 months before quietly leaving. I had noticed her leaving. I assumed she had found a congregation closer to her house. She had not found a congregation. She had found my husband.
4 years. 4 years of 3 weeks offshore and 1 week home. 3 weeks offshore and 1 week home. The rhythm I had built my life around. The rhythm I had trusted completely. He had not always been offshore. Some of those 3-week stretches he had spent in a flat in Rumuola that he rented under a company name with Amara Daiki, who had a son named Tobekuchuku, who had just married my daughter 2 days ago. I sat down on the bathroom floor. Not because my legs failed me, because the information was too heavy to hold standing up. Kingsley looked at me from the bathtub. He said, "Chisom, I am sorry." I looked at my husband. 25 years, 2 children, that house he built with his hands, Ada's graduation where he danced and cried, every prayer he had ever prayed over this family at the dinner table with his eyes closed and his voice steady. "Does she know?" I asked. Tobekuchuku's mother. "Does she know who Ada is?" The silence told me everything. She knew. She had known from the beginning. Ada did not know that night. I made that decision in the bathroom in 30 seconds, and I do not regret it. My daughter was sitting on the floor in her wedding dress 2 days into her marriage, and she was already broken enough. The full truth could wait until morning, until she had slept, until she had something in her stomach, until I had figured out how to hand a person the most devastating information of their life without destroying what remained. Pastor Emeka stayed. He sat with Ada in the room and talked to her quietly while I went back to the bathroom and closed the door. I told Kingsley to call Tobekuchuku back from the lobby. He looked at me. "Call him," I said, "right now. Call your girlfriend's son and tell him to come back to this room because he deserves to know what you have done to his marriage before he spent another night in this hotel thinking he is on his honeymoon." "Chisom, call him, Kingsley, or I will go to the lobby myself." He called. Tobekuchuku came in 4 minutes. He knocked on the bathroom door confused. I opened it. He looked at his new father-in-law sitting on the bathtub edge and at me standing in the doorway, and something in the composition of it told him immediately that whatever had happened in this room was not small. He looked at me. "Mama Ada, what is going on?" I looked at this young man, 28 years old, good face, honest eyes. He had stood at that altar 2 days ago and promised to love and protect my daughter. He had meant it. I could see that he had meant it. He did not know what his mother had done. "Sit down, Tobekuchuku," I said. I will not describe the next hour in detail. Some things belong only to the people who were in the room. What I will tell you is that Tobekuchuku heard everything. He heard it without interruption. He sat on the bathroom floor with his back against the wall and he listened to his new father-in-law explain, in a voice drained of everything except exhaustion, that for 4 years he had been conducting a relationship with Tobekuchuku's mother. That his mother had known about Ada, had known who Ada's father was, had attended our church and watched our family and said nothing. When Kingsley finished, Tobekuchuku was quiet for a very long time. Then he said one thing. He said, "My mother brought this match. She introduced me to Ada at her friend's house last year. She arranged the introduction." The bathroom went completely silent. Amara Daike had not only known who Ada was, she had arranged the marriage. Her son to my daughter, the children of the 2 families she had been moving between for 4 years, brought together in a church, blessed by a pastor,
joined in front of God and everyone we loved. I do not know what she intended. I have thought about it many times since, and I still cannot find the complete shape of it. Was it guilt dressed up as generosity? Was it a way of binding the two families permanently so that the secret could never fully destroy either of them? Was it something colder than that? I do not know. What I know is that my daughter married a man whose mother had been sleeping with her father, and nobody in that room had been told. Does a person like Amara Daike deserve forgiveness? Or is there a category of betrayal that sits outside of what forgiveness can reach? Tell me in the comments. I want your honest answer. I went back to Ada at 2 a.m. She was still awake. Pastor Emeka had fallen asleep in the chair in the corner. Ada was sitting on the bed, her wedding dress replaced now with a hotel robe, her face washed clean of the makeup she had worn for 2 days. She looked very young and very old at the same time. I sat beside her. I took her hand. I told her. I watched my daughter receive the truth about her father and her mother-in-law, and the 4 years of careful deception that had been living inside her marriage before the marriage had even begun. She did not scream. She did not throw things. She made a sound once early, a sound I hope never to hear again from any person I love. Then, she went very quiet in the way that Ada goes quiet when she has made a decision. When I finished, she sat for a long time without speaking. Then she said, "Where is Tobekuchuku now?" "In the bathroom, with your father." "Is he okay?" I looked at my daughter, 2 hours after receiving the worst news of her life, and she was asking if her husband was okay. I said, "Tobekuchuku did not know Ada. He did not know any of it." She nodded slowly. She said, "I know," she said. I could see it on his face. What happened next is the part of this story that I did not expect, because I expected my daughter to ask for the marriage to be dissolved immediately. I expected rage and collapse and the kind of grief that burns everything around it. Instead, Ada asked me to leave the room. She wanted to speak to Tobekuchuku alone. I looked at her. "Are you sure?" "Yes, Mama." I left. I sat in the corridor outside room 14 at 3 a.m. with Pastor Emeka beside me and Kingsley somewhere behind a closed door, and I waited. They were in that room for 2 hours. When the door opened, Ada came out first. Her eyes were red, but her back was straight. Tobekuchuku came behind her. He had been crying. He was not hiding it. Ada looked at me. "Tobekuchuku is not his mother," she said. "He is my husband, and I am not ending my marriage because of what our parents did." She looked at Tobekuchuku. "But his mother will never enter my house, not once, not ever. And my father," she turned to look at Kingsley, who had appeared in the corridor, "my father is no longer my father." Kingsley flinched as if she had hit him. Ada looked at him one last time. "You danced at my wedding," she said. "You cried. You held my hand when they played my entrance song, and you looked so proud. And all of it was a performance. You knew what you had done, and you stood there and you performed being my father." She paused. "I will not perform having won." She turned. She took Tobekuchuku's hand. She went back into room 14 and closed the door. Kingsley was exposed completely within 2 weeks. Not by me, though I would have. By Amara Daike herself. When Tobekuchuku confronted his mother, which he did the morning after that night, alone, without telling her what he knew, simply arriving at her door, she initially denied everything. Then she confirmed it. Then she made the mistake that finished Kingsley entirely. She called him. She called him in a panic and told him Tobekuchuku knew and that he needed to fix it. She said she was not going to carry this alone. She said she had letters. She said she had records of transfers she had made to her account over 4 years, and if he tried to abandon her now, she would use them. Tobekuchuku had set his phone to record before he knocked on his mother's door. He had the entire call. He gave it to me. I gave it to our lawyer. Within 3 weeks, Kingsley's company became aware of the situation. The transfers to Amara Daike had been partly made through an account connected to company funds. His colleagues became aware, his family became aware, the church became aware. The man who had built that house with his hands and prayed over that dinner table for 25 years stood in a Port Harcourt courtroom and watched his life reduce itself to the consequences of what he had chosen. He lost the house in the settlement. He lost his position. He lost his daughter. He tried to call me once, 6 months later. I looked at his name on the screen for a long time. Then I put the phone face down and went back to what I was doing. Ada and Tobekuchuku are still married. It has not been easy. You do not build a life on a foundation like that without cracks showing. There have been difficult months. There have been conversations that lasted until morning. There has been therapy for both of them, separately and together. But they are still married. Tobekuchuku cut contact with his mother completely. That was his decision. Ada did not ask him to. He made it alone and he has not reversed it. Last Christmas, they came to stay with me for a week. On the last evening, we sat in the backyard after dinner and Ada put her head on my shoulder the way she did when she was small. And we stayed like that without speaking for a long time. Then she said, "Mama, do you think we will ever be okay? Truly okay?" I thought about it honestly. I think okay is something you build every day, not something you arrive at. She was quiet. Then, I am still angry. You are allowed to be angry. I am angry that his mother arranged that introduction knowing everything she knew, that she sat in that church and watched me walk down that aisle and said nothing. Yes, but I am not angry at Tobekuchuku. I know. Is that strange? I looked at my daughter. No, I said, that is wisdom. She exhaled slowly, the exhale of a woman putting something down that she has been carrying for a long time. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe never completely, but the decision to stop letting someone else's choices determine the shape of her life. That decision. I want to say something to every woman listening. I thought I knew my husband. 25 years, his voice in the morning, the way he took his tea, every scar on his hands from building that house. I knew all of it, and I did not know him. That is the thing nobody prepares you for. Not the betrayal itself, but the revision. Going back through 25 years of memory and asking yourself, which parts were real? Which mornings were genuine? Which prayers were true? I stopped asking after a while, because some questions have no answer that helps you. What I know is this: my daughter is alive, her marriage is imperfect and hard-won, and hers. I am in a house that is quieter than it used to be, but that belongs to me completely. And the man who danced at her wedding and performed being her father is living with the full weight of what that performance cost him. That is enough. Not everything, but enough to build on. If this story moved something in you, press the like button for every mother who drove through the dark to reach her daughter. Subscribe to Femmz Stories so you never miss a story that matters. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What time is it there? And what would you have done standing in that bathroom doorway? I read every single comment. With love and everything it costs. Mama Ada. 2 more stories are waiting for you on screen right now. There is so much more on this channel. Subscribe and know that this mother is grateful for every one of you who stayed until the end. See you in the next story.